All right. Hello, everyone, and good evening. Thank you all for joining us tonight. My name is Jana Farley, and I am the Communications Director for the ACLU of South Dakota. Again, thank you for joining us for our Indigenous Legislative Academy. Now, of course, you are not here to hear me speak, but I just want to go over a couple housekeeping items before I turn things over to Candy. Again, Indigenous Legislative Academy. We are recording this so that if someone has, is missing the presentation tonight, they will be able to view it at a later date. If you've got any questions, now you will know everybody is on mute and you're not on video, but if you have any questions anytime throughout the presentation, please type them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we will answer them at various points throughout the presentation. I think that's about it for the general housekeeping items. So again, like I said, nobody is here to hear me chat. So I would like to turn it over to Candy Brings Plenty, who will be facilitating the training tonight. So let's see, I'm going to stop the screen sharing here and turn it over to Candy. All right, Candy, it's all you. Oh, Candy, you're on mute.
My apologies. Good evening, everyone. Hey, matakiapi. Leampe tukile, iyo ha chante, washte nape chuziapie. Imachiapi, chante makilawi. Imachiapi, wakia tuampi iyo yampawi. Mi washichu chajekile, Candy Brings Plenty. I would like to greet each and every one of you with a handshake from my heart. My name is Candy Brings Plenty, and I am the Indigenous Justice Organizer for the ACLU South Dakota. And this is I would like to say, I'm about 1.5 years into this position. And I am really excited that we are moving with leaps and bounds in our communities, locally, tribally, and now at the state level. So, I definitely have a background in public administration, and I did a lot of campaign work and legislative work in Portland, Oregon. But, that legislative session, that legislator itself is a whole nother end of the spectrum. When I came back to South Dakota and I started working in the legislative session and I stepped into the ring for the first time here, it's a whole different environment, a different kind of advocacy hat that I had to put on, and after working in and with progressive, supportive legislators, it really blew me away, and I'm going to get personal right now because I have witnessed throughout Indian country and across Turtle Island, folks looking towards the Great Sioux Nation, the Ocheti Shakoi, for folks who have that background and ancestral inherent right to claim and reclaim our lands and our ceremonies, and to the point now with utilizing policies and procedures and bills as one of our resources to maintain and advocate for what that looks like in our community as Indigenous people, for our tribal nations, and for our Wakainja, our children. So I know, I pursued my master's in public administration, and I learned what that looks like from a colonial worldview. And every time I was in my classes, it was full of Washichi folks, non-natives, white folks. And so it really clicked for them when we went through and learned about, governmental processes. But I continued to think about how, as an Indigenous person, as a tribal member, as a mother, we go out and we retain and attain those types of knowledge, those education, and those types of governmental systems so that we can bring it home and not just implement it, but also be a person and a voice and an advocate who translates that so that our elders understand, so that our community members understand, so that even our tribal council members can conceive the power that they have in their hands. And one thing that I do, I am very vocal when I have a political point of view, whether it's personal or professional. And it's because I've learned, those Washichu constituents, those those folks who are landowners, who are non-native voters, they understand this concept very thoroughly. And, even myself, and I see that in my family members and within my community circles, that it is important that we also have this space. And this is why I advocated to have an Indigenous Legislative Academy, because we did host one at the beginning of January. And, and I am going to invite my colleague, Jet Jonas, to also introduce themselves, because we're switching seats right now. They hosted an activist academy so that they can empower and educate and influence LGBTQ and Two-Spirit folks who wanted to learn about the legislative process, who were planning to create, I'm getting passionate here, create strategic testimonial lineups, to create strategic advocacy consortiums, and have this knowledge so that when they go into the state capitol, they are prepared. They have a knowledge aspect to know what this process is that they're fighting for. So, as Indigenous people, we continue to stand up and we continue to step on those front lines. And this was something that I pushed very intentionally and even brought up during, my interview for this position, was that my intent is to evolve the front lines. And for a lot of folks, the front lines can be whatever obstacle or oppressive entity you're working to dismantle. And for me, my position definitely was rooted in our fight to protect our Indigenous civil rights and for all the civil liberties for all folks who are protecting, protesting, advocating for our water rights, and that's part of that riot boosting bill. It was very intentional and attacking, our voice and our First Amendment right to protest the KXL pipeline. And, just a little bit of background, that's part of this position that I'm holding, is to be that liaison, to be that conduit, to be an organizer in the places and spaces that non-native organizers can't reach. And that is very broad. I'm stopped when I'm shopping, when I'm at Walmart. I'm inundated often when there's something big happening. And oftentimes my position has a very broad spectrum, but for this intent, I am very much a resource for our Indigenous communities and legislators during this legislative session. And I felt the best thing that I could do was initiate this training, this webinar, so that it's not only just viewable by those who are attending, but to be a resource that is recorded so that you can also utilize it as needed. So before I move forward, I just want to thank the folks who definitely supported this and all of you who are attending, because we have some bills that are coming through the state legislature that are, represented and that are being sponsored and pushed by Indigenous organizations. And I think that is awesome and that is amazing. And that's exactly how we wanted to evolve, because that is part of that civic engagement. We are dual citizens. I was watching and rewatching a few of Russell Means's UN speeches and National Senate speeches, because I always try to find words and quotes and parts that speak to me beyond being an Indigenous justice organizer. And last night I was listening and he had talked about how being a dual citizen, being a citizen of the United States and a tribal citizen, is almost oppressive in itself, because we have to speak the language and learn the entities in order to be heard. And so I know last year there was times when I was trying to convey that we need to be very disciplined in our testimonials, because it is that thought and intent that there are folks who bring these bills and they're very passionate, but the legislative process is a process, you know, and that's what I want to put in the hands of the Oyate tonight, so that you can understand this process, so that we can move forward, and that there's also this entity that I really continue to push with the ACLU and any of the other organizations that I've been working with, because we are decades behind in this legislative game. We are decades behind, and there's, you know, representatives who have generational senators in their families, and they were walking and talking and born into what this governmental system looks like, and it's at their advantage, and we feel that so much right now. So I want to, and I have had discussions with my colleagues, and I want to invite and introduce our new advocacy manager, because this is their first session and they moved here. I came from the West Coast, they came from the East Coast, and here we are, you know, and this is what I was talking about. A lot of other nations look to us, and here we are in our ancestral lands in South Dakota, and yet we are still facing what that oppressive system looks like. And I'm really excited to have Jet here, because they have a voice and they're speaking as a person who is a first-time organizer, advocate, and just human being that wants to make an impact with the South Dakota legislator. So go ahead, Jet. Please introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, my name is Jet Janellis. I use they, them, theirs, and she, her, hers pronouns. And I am the advocacy manager at the ACLU of South Dakota. This is my first session in South Dakota, and it is really no joke. It's really no joke. So I'm, you know, going through it a little bit right now. We were just on a call before this where we were kind of going over everything and just kind of the experience of legislative session and the weight of lobbying and organizing, and yeah, so I'm really excited to, you know, to learn tonight from Candy, and to be in community with you all, and just so happy to be here, and so happy to, you know, just keep fighting and keep advocating and keep using our voices to make South Dakota better. So yeah, so thank you for being here, and thank you for having me, Candy.
Okay, folks, so I'm going to share my screen now, and I've never been a person who really likes to follow presentations and PowerPoints, but right now I feel that visual is very needed, and I'm going to do my best to navigate in a timely, respectful manner. But here we go. Digital Indigenous Legislative Academy. All right, folks. So this is our agenda. We've done our welcome and introduction. We will be talking about the South Dakota Legislative Process 101 and moving forward to what legislative advocacy looks like, and even, you know, trying to convey what it looks like and feels like, because some folks are going to be testifying, and maybe you have, but this year is definitely a little bit different because we're doing a lot of virtual testifying, and it is a whole different experience when you're there in person. And, you know, I remember whenever Representative Puri Puyer and Senator Red Dawn took office the last term. And they did convey how much heartache and heartbreak they felt just by being in the Capitol and seeing those paintings of the genocide of our Oyate. And that in itself, you know, I feel is part of that oppressive entity. And it just shows us, you know, without words, that the state capitol has an agenda to continue that colonized process. So, you know, next after that will be the tips and influencing on elected officials. And I say including tribal council because these tips and tricks are for all elected officials. And I, you know, after really being thorough and being confident with this process and how, as a constituent, you are so powerful, you know, to hold our elected officials accountable. That is the biggest part of advocacy that we can attribute to. And I feel like within our tribal systems, you know, employing the word advocacy and utilizing the term constituents is very foreign, you know, and I've been trying to look for a Lakota word, and I'm still looking for those words so that I can, again, translate them so that our elders and our Oyate can convey them, you know, in our walk, in our talk, so that we can empower our dual citizenship roles and put them together and impact directly all of our elected leaders. But okay, so after that, we will do, you know, there's listed a few resources for activism and the Q&A. But first of all, you know, we have and we do land acknowledgements within the ACLU, whether it's digital or in our emails or even just on our website. But oftentimes when I'm in spaces with Indigenous folks, you know, I really feel I want to move beyond land acknowledgement because we know this is our ancestral land. This is the Ocheti Shakoi land with our 9 tribes of South Dakota. And those who are watching, you know, this training is supposed to be or intended for an Indigenous lens. And with that said, you know, when I say beyond land acknowledgement, for me, that means I want to acknowledge my ancestors. So in this moment, you know, I do want to be not so politically driven, but I want to be driven as a human being. And for me, that includes acknowledging my ancestors, because I am doing this work. We are doing this work to emphasize that we're going to utilize resources to create change, whether that's on a local level, a county level, a tribal level, or state level. So in this moment, you know, I want to acknowledge our tribes, and I'm also thankful that we have and we are building those relationships. And we want to acknowledge this land. We want to acknowledge why we are continuing to move forward as political entities. Okay, so ACLU South Dakota. I will admit, when I took this position, I didn't realize how many of my community members and my family members had no idea what the ACLU was, or even what it stands for. It's American Civil Liberties Union of South Dakota. So we are an affiliate of our national office. We are a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization. And a lot of folks, you know, they ask me what nonpartisan means. And, you know, we have our parties, our political parties, and we are basically having a mutual standpoint because we are, you know, we're an organization that is emphasizing the processes and the procedures and advocacy, and we work in the courts, the state legislature and other governmental bodies and communities to defend and advance the civil rights of civil liberties guaranteed to everyone in South Dakota under the state and federal constitutions. Okay, so that is definitely the legal jargon, but at the same time, I want to convey this as part of our dual citizenship. We have the right to our civil liberties. And I really, really love when I hear, water protectors, land defenders, frontline folks talk about their constitutional rights, because that is that language. Whenever we use this colonial Western jargon, folks continue to see beyond who we are just standing there. We're empowering ourselves with our inherent rights, and that includes our constitutional rights. Issues we work on are abortion access, reproductive rights, criminal justice reform, death penalty, immigration rights, LGBTQ and Two-Spirit rights, disability rights, Indigenous rights, free speech rights, privacy, technology, gender justice, women's rights, voting rights, and so much more. Because, like I was saying, my position is a very broad position because there isn't one defined definition of what Indigenous justice looks like. But, I really lean towards allowing my community to define what that is in that moment for them, because that is part of the work that we do, is to emphasize and elevate grassroots leaders, because they're the ones who know the work. They are impacted the most. We are also community organizers, attorneys, policy nerds, and lobbyists. Okay, so here is a quote. And, I thought about taking this quote out and adding a quote from one of our Indigenous leaders, and I think that's why I was fishing around and watching some of Russell Means and some of our AIM leaders' speeches, because I wanted to put them in here. But I thought this is definitely perfect for this presentation, because this is where I want folks to understand that as a constituent, as a person who is voting and putting our voice in the hands of these elected leaders, that they are responsible to hold and respect what that looks like. So this quote here, it is said that Franklin Delano Roosevelt used to tell his supporters that it was their job to make him do the right thing. Now let me repeat that, their job to make him do the right thing. He was right, because it is our job to help and make elected officials do the right thing. So I'm really gonna, spend a lot of time on what the legislative process looks like, but I'm also gonna emphasize this quote. I'm gonna emphasize this intent, because that's what this word constituent means, is that we have that right to hold these elected officials responsible. And this is also why we have to vote, why we have to register to vote, and why we have to keep voicing ourselves. Because even yesterday, I watched and witnessed numerous elected officials on the legislative floor talking about how, they didn't hear from their constituents that they were, voting in a derogative way, or, there's bills that are horrible and they don't hear from their constituents within their districts. And these districts are huge. So there should be at least one or two or a handful of people who are voicing themselves. But I feel like in Indian country, and I wrote this in my post, I wrote about how we don't trust the government at all. We don't trust the police. We don't trust these systems, because we know that they were built to oppress us, to silence us, to eradicate us. And it's part of that genocidal process. But at the same time, that's why we need to be empowered to speak up and to use our voice, because we're the ones who are allowing these elected officials to continue to vote for these hurtful, harmful bills, to use our voices in a way that we would never speak. So I just want to emphasize this more than ever. And here's another quote, and this one is absolutely right on, because you have to act as if it were possible to radically transform the world, and you have to do it all the time. So, that is part of advocating, as part of being an activist, and that's part of being, that's a civic duty. Whenever we talk about civic duties, it's about respecting our civil rights. It's about respecting our constitutional rights. But a part of me feels like if we're not vocalizing that, how can we get those elected officials to respect our voices? And here we go. Make your voice heard. And this is our guide to the legislative session. And, I also want to just point out, I really love that there is this entity and a bill coming up. I believe it was just now read on the floor yesterday. There is an impact when it comes to art. Art is activism. For people who don't feel that they're someone who can speak up to and at a legislative session, at a hearing, maybe they're not someone who can testify, but your voice doesn't have to be loud and vocal. You have abilities throughout your whole being to create and share what that looks like. Because right here, I love how the Cheyenne River Grassroots Collective does a lot of banner drops, and they don't have to speak at all, but their intent is seen. And to see that is much more louder than hearing it. So this in itself, our monuments speak monuments when it comes to activism, when it comes to advocacy, when it comes to the South Dakota legislator. Okay, folks, so now we're going to get into it. So South Dakota elects, we have so much, I don't know, there's all these numbers, but there are 35 districts, and each district boundaries change within the US Census. And this is why it was so important for us to be counted. There's so many different reasons why census was a must impact for our Oyate, for our tribal communities. And I'm thankful for those people who put that time and energy and really went door to door. Even, and I know folks who had caught COVID by going door to door and trying to get folks to get counted. And this is why it is important. But we have 35 senators and 70 representatives. Our legislator is bicameral, which means it has two houses of equal power. Those are the South Dakota Senate and the South Dakota House of Representatives. Each district has one senator and two representatives. We have 35 districts, so that means we have 105 legislators. That means that you have 3 people representing you directly in the South Dakota legislature. Now, that means we have, triple the opportunity to convey our voices and fight against any of these bills that either we are opposing or that we are proposing. 2 exceptions, though, District 26 and District 28 are broken into A and B districts. 1 representative is in charge of representing A and 1 representative is in charge of representing B. Right now, there are only 2 political parties represented in Pierre, Republicans and Democrats. Of 105 total legislators, 94 Republicans, 11 are Democrats, 70 members, and 62 Republicans. In the House of Representatives, there are 70 members. 62 are Republicans and 8 are Democrats. In our Senate legislature, there are 35 members. 32 are Republicans and 3 are Democrats. And that's just for this year. And this is, I'm going to emphasize again why we vote. Legislators are responsible for debating the merits of the bills. And they draft the bills and they introduce the bills. They're voting to pass or to kill the bills. And all legislators serve 2-year terms. Each district elects legislators that are tasked with representing them Though legislators do many things, their primary duty is to make the laws that govern our state and impact the lives of all South Dakotans. And that is so important. That is so important for me to convey, because a lot of times we have our tribal folks, my family members, folks who feel like it's more important to be aligned or to be up to date with tribal council, because often, we are Indigenous people, we are tribal members, and sometimes we feel like that is our primary government, but it really is within this legislator, because these bills impact the whole statewide. I know there is that boundary and there is that jurisdiction, but we all drive off the reservation to go shopping, to do different things, to seek jobs. We are always impacted by politics. I have sisters who tell me, oh, I don't speak politics. I don't want nothing to do with politics. But politics has everything to do with you. If you are just residing, utilizing, and a part of the state, you are impacted by politics. There are the main components of this work: drafting and introducing bills. This is the meat of how laws are made. Legislators take an idea, their own or their other constituent suggested, and constituent is us. Constituents are people or organizations who take a bill to their legislators, and they're seeking for them to bring them and present them and to be that voice. And that's why I want to emphasize being a constituent is powerful. I gotta breathe because I'm getting passionate. Okay. And legislators can introduce as many bills as they want on as many topics that they want. Each bill typically has two prime sponsors. One is a member of the House, one is a senator. Those legislators are listed first on the bill, followed by the names of the co-sponsors or other legislators who have agreed to sign the bill. The prime sponsors are typically the legislators whose job it is to really make the case for the bill in the hearings and to usher it through the legislative process. Debating the merits of the bills. The legislator uses committee structures to debate and have hearings on the bills. And this is where it is very much like tribal council, and how we have tribal committees, and those tribal council members sit on those committees, and it's like resolutions, but these are bills. These are state bills. And so I only use that comparison because I did have a discussion earlier today with folks who wanted to know what committees were and what that meant and how that impacted the bill. So on both the Senate and the House are split into committees on various topics. Once a bill is introduced, it goes to a committee where it is debated by the legislators on that committee. Legislators on the committee can introduce and vote on amendments or change to the bill in these committee meetings. Voting to pass or kill bills. Every bill has to survive 4 votes. House committee, full House, which is 70 members, Senate committee, and full Senate, 35 members, to get out of the legislature and land on the governor's desk. Legislators may also introduce and vote on amendments to bills where the entire House or entire Senate consider them. And, I want to slow that down a little bit, because the way I see it is, so there is the 2 entities and within the House and the Senate. So like I said, there's these 4 components that each bill has to go through. And so today I had someone else contact me and say, okay, so what's going on with this bill? I heard it didn't get voted. Is it done now? So I had to slow down, and we're going to break it down here in a couple slides. So I'm just wanting to reiterate, there is this process. Each legislator serves 2-year terms. In November 2020, we elected a new crop of legislators who will serve in the 2021 and 2022 legislative session. In November of 2022, legislators will be up for election. Okay, so next, this here, let me move things around. This here is a very important calendar. So there's this legislative timing system that we definitely have to go through. Each year, the South Dakota legislative session runs 40 or fewer days total from the January through March. The 2021 session has 37 legislative days. And the 2021 legislative session began on January 12th. The last day of the regular session is March 11th. The final day of session is reserved for a legislator to continue any of the governor's vetoes, and that is on March 28th. So let's spend a few minutes talking about timing during the legislative session. This is important because anything you want done at the session has to happen on this calendar. Something I found is that people wait too long to start getting involved and contacting their legislators. So whenever you're thinking about influencing a legislator, make sure you're building a time for them to actually hear your message. You know, one of the things that I've witnessed and I am trying to be a resource for is that we have legislators who are inundated with emails. They're inundated with phone calls and text messages. So we definitely, have to set up some of these phone banking, and we can do them from home. And I'm willing to offer some training, message me. I can definitely help some of these organizations and folks, because last year, we did do them in person. We did host phone banking at the ACLU office in Sioux Falls. And you just bring your own phone call. We can provide a list and a script. And so I think that is very effective, because it takes a team to get a message through to some of these legislators. And, we just absolutely need to keep track of that time. And I want to make sure that folks get heard, because that is our whole endpoint. Our goal is that our legislators hear us. Other important dates you might want to know is January 28th, which is today. It is the last day for unlimited bill introduction. Like we said, our legislators can submit as many bills as they want until January 28th. February 3rd is the last day for introduction of individual bills and joint resolutions. February 4th is the last day of introduction of committee bills. February 25th is the last day for a bill to pass the first chamber. March 8th is the last day for a bill to pass the second chamber. There are several deadlines that we want to go over. And like I said today, January 28th is the last day for the bill introduction. Up to this date, individual legislators can file as many bills as they want to without restriction and without limit. February 3rd, between January 29th and February 3rd, legislators can file up to 3 additional bills each. After February 3rd, legislators cannot file any new bills. So from today until February 3rd, our legislators get to push through 3 more bills. February 4th, the last day for introduction of committee bills. These are also freestanding bills, but they are not introduced by individual legislators. They will say something like introduced by the Senate Judiciary Committee at the request of the Attorney General, or something like that. Okay, so here we are. This is the school rock portion of the training. Let's walk through how bills become laws. And this is like the component of what this legislative academy is about. You'll notice some of the important timing elements as we walk through this. So Because of our legislator, because our legislator is bicameral, meaning it has two chambers, bills can start in either the House or the Senate. It doesn't matter which. For purposes of the flow chart, we will put up here, but know that these are the things that do not happen simultaneously like this. They move through either the yellow column and then through the red one, or vice versa. So I'm going to show you. Let me go back real quick. So this is what the legislator introduction of a bill looks like. If a senator moves to Senate, or if a representative moves to the House. So this is the next process. A bill is assigned to a committee. So this past week and the next 3 days, bills are being brought by our representatives. And after that happens, they're either going through the Senate or the House, and then this bill will be assigned to a committee. The committee will vote to either pass or fail. So we're going to use this hypothetical that this bill got passed. From there, it goes to a Senate vote. And I feel like that's where a few of the bills are now that have gone through their first chambers. After the Senate vote or the House vote, so I'm kind of going down the Senate lane, but it's, either way, this bill has been passed. Okay, so moving forward, it moves to the House. So if we're doing, because it's bicameral, so first there's these two entities we were talking about. So a total of 4, and the 4 is it goes through the Senate and then it goes through the House. Or if it was introduced to the House, it goes through the House and then through the Senate. So to reiterate, there is a committee vote, and usually that's where we see those first initial hearings where people show up and testify. And, a lot of that happened this past week. So those bills that passed, now they went on to the Senate vote, and yay, it passed. And, if any of these are voted no, then that's when we use this term, like it's been killed. It was killed on the floor, or it was killed in committee. So that means it's done. It's not going forward anymore. It failed. But we're using the hypothetical that they're moving forward. So now that it moves forward, we're seeing that it went into the House and it goes through the same process. So then it went through the Senate. Now it goes back through this other flow. It goes to the House committee. And then if the House votes it yes, then it moves on to the House floor. So it has to go through both. And that's what we mean by those 4 chambers. Once it gets passed through those 4 chambers, and then it gets put on the governor's desk. And that's where we want to see these bills. We want to see them being voted into law. We want to see them on the governor's desk. And what's different about a bill passing the second chamber is that that's exactly where it belongs, or excuse me, that's where it ends up, is on the governor's desk. But for most bills, this will be the end of the journey. The majority of the bills that go to the governor's end, that goes to the governor ends up being signed and then goes into law. All right, I'm gonna take a brief moment to take a drink of my coffee. Coffee break. Iced coffee break. Okay, so moving on. Here's what happens when a bill gets to the governor. She has 5 days to decide what to do. If she does nothing in those 5 days and doesn't sign the bill, it automatically becomes law. If she signs the bill in those 5 days, it becomes law. The rarest outcome is if she chooses, the governor can veto the bill. At that point, the bill is dead. Unless the legislator overrides it. The legislator can override her veto. They can do a 2/3 vote of the body, or 2/3 of both House and Senate. If a veto bill fails to get a 2/3 of the House and the Senate, it stays vetoed and no longer becomes a law. And there is definitely the timing component. You see here in this 5 business days, it is a rule that that's how long the governor gets to sign a veto. She can veto it sooner than that, but has to do so by the end of the 5th day. Otherwise, it becomes law. This means a few things. If a bill you really, really hate gets passed out of both chambers, you still have options. Bills can sometimes take a few days before they actually get to the governor's desk. And the 5-day clock starts. So if you want the governor to veto something, you need to start advocating for the second that bad bill passes out of the 2nd chamber. And if you get really lucky and the governor does veto that bill you hate, at that point, you need to start asking your legislators to let that veto stand. Alternatively, if a bill you love gets passed and heads to the governor's office, make sure you let her know that you want her to sign it. And that's the legislative process. This flow chart in itself, I feel, is easy for me to see and understand because I definitely have been seasoned in the legislative session. And I encourage any of you folks, I am here for a resource, and that is why I wanted this session to be recorded so that we can upload it to YouTube and you can rewind, slow it down, and digest it at a pace that will help you feel confident. And this all starts over again next year. Each session is a blank slate. Is a blank slate. That doesn't mean that the legislators can't attempt to pass the same or similar bills each year. And we know this, especially with the riot boosting bill and the Ocheti Shakowin community bill. But they have to go through all the work all over again. And if a bill doesn't become law in the 40-day session, every bill that becomes law goes through this process. Okay, so we're coming close to time. I got about 13 minutes left. I'm going to share our legislative advocacy and a few tips. And I want to definitely convey that this is a process. And once we become familiar with this process, once we become confident in this process, that we are going to be able to make a huge impact for the state of South Dakota, for our communities, for our tribal nations, for our relatives, and for our Wakaija, our future. Now that you know how the legislative process works, you know how bills become law in South Dakota. Here's a part that requires effort, the action step of activism and advocacy. It is an action step that people really struggle with, and it's honestly one of our biggest challenges here at the ACLU of South Dakota. We can analyze the bills, and we can lobby for them and against them, but our work cannot get the job done without you. We need activists and advocates because they have the power to get elected officials to do what they want. Your advocacy makes change happen. Your energy, your actions, your personal stories, and your passions are how South Dakota gets better. And we come from oral traditions. As Indigenous folks, we are storytellers. And this is why I can't convey how important I feel it is for us to understand this process so that we can align our stories, our oral traditions, and our activism together and make change and create change on the legislative floor. And this is so important because good bills die and bad bills pass while legislators say on the record that they haven't heard from their constituents about this and therefore assume that they don't have a problem. If a legislator does not hear from you on an issue, they assume you don't care, or they assume that you're condoning their vote. If they don't hear directly from you after the vote in favor of a bill that discriminates against an entire class of people, or it takes away their rights, they assume you approve their actions. Okay, folks, so how do you get started? First things first, research your legislators. You can do that at www.sdlegislator.gov. If you don't know who your legislators are, you can enter in your address or city and look up who your representatives are. You can check out their voting records and see where they stand on things that are important to you. There are a few ways that you can get in touch with your legislators. Email is good, but calls are better. Ideally, do them both. We have a citizen legislator. That means that your senator and representative spends 3 months in Pierre, and the rest of the time, they're living and working in your community. Legislators do not have professional staff. Only a few in leadership have even offices. So when you call the numbers to their home or to their cell that is listed in the legislator's website, that call is going to them direct. This is an extraordinary amount of access that activists and advocates can and should take advantage of. Okay, here are some tips, and I feel that these are important. Write them down, screenshot it, take a photo, because you can use these across the spectrum. And this is where why I wrote, you can utilize these tips even with your tribal council representatives. So know the district and names of your legislator. 2, plan out what you will say to them. And 3, remember to mention the bill number, if there's one, and why you are calling or writing them. Make it short and sweet and get to your point quickly. Tell a personal story they can connect to. And problem, solution, action, tell them, vote yes on House Bill, whatever the number is. Or you can tell them very passionately, vote no on this bill, and this is why. A couple additional tips are not only contacting them when they do something you don't like, but when you recognize that they did something you did like, that positive reinforcement can help build your relationship with them. And second, let them know you are going to follow up. Be specific about when you will follow up as well. You can include something like, if I don't hear from you by X amount of time, I will follow up with you at X amount of time. Okay, impact your community. Write a letter to the editor. You know, these are other tips and tricks. And a lot of times, you know, we definitely use social media across in country to convey events and our stances on issues that impact us. But this is something we can also do, is to write a letter to the editor and put our words out so that it is in writing. Because a lot of our tribal communities and our Indigenous elders, they definitely rely heavily on printed media. A few impacts of making an impact in your community outside of your direct advocacy to your elected officials comes in the form of a letter. You can write a letter to the editor or to an op-ed on your website. We have tips on writing them and contact information for you to send to them. Urge your friends and family to act and to help them do so. Think about your spheres of influence. Do you have a big social media following? Do you have a like-minded friends in your tioshbayes, in your schools, and family? You can definitely get them involved in your work. And don't be afraid to talk politics. It's important. Having a person you are close to or know personally to help you be accountable and engaged and to rely on for support is incredibly helpful for you. And you will be growing your work the more people you can personally pull in. Okay, so let's spread the word. Like I said, talk with friends and families, use your social media, don't be afraid, and write an op-ed and join a cause or an organization. You know, writing and continuing this work is part of that work. Continuing to expand your networks is part of that work too. So, you know, I want to encourage folks, you can even go to our website, ACLU South Dakota is just a huge resource. We have a lot of spaces and places on our website where you can just fill it in and send it directly to your legislators. Okay, so, you know, beyond that, We can attend legislative coffees or Cracker Barrels, and Cracker Barrels, and those words in itself was foreign to me, and it is what our legislators call town halls. You can also, you and other community members will be able to talk and hear at these Cracker Barrels from your legislators that represent your districts. The format differs for each district. So which legislators are going to be there? Do you have to submit your questions in writing and testimonies? What does it look like to be heard in these Cracker Barrels? Do the research, make sure you have access, and look into the spaces and places where we live. I know in Rapid City there is various Cracker Barrels, and last year I went to a few, and one of them was at Western Dakota Votech. And I did see some folks, some Indigenous people there, but they didn't speak up, and that's okay. We just need to hear what we need to hear, and we need to be able to convey our voices. These are also enormous opportunities to make your voice heard and to show legislators that you're watching. And that's why I said it's okay if you're not speaking up. But I also want to talk about digital advocacy and the things you can do from the safety of your home and during these times. There are a lot of different things you can do to make an impact from home, like phone, text banking, postcards, and letter writing campaigns. And you can host these too. You can host them in person and virtually. You can use social media to amplify and communicate about actions and those around you, using specific hashtags that are followed by legislators and key actors, such as hashtag SDLEG. So it's like South Dakota Leg, etc. Attending, sharing, organizing digital events, also working that supports what other activists are doing. And as I said before, activism doesn't look like just one thing. There are so many ways that we can continue expressing our voice. Okay, anything that I want to mention, another thing I want to mention briefly is that you can do outside of the legislative session, things that make big impacts are attending district meetings, and this is why I continue to use that representation of our knowledge of tribal meetings, because there's always district meetings, and we need to also step into the realm of our state district meetings. We do a deep dive, and we should be doing deep dives into how to do this in a second half of our Activist Academy. In-district meetings are simply sitting down face-to-face with your legislator in the district in which you both live. And, we are community members. We are relatives. We share the same resources throughout our communities. And that should be that first human contact when we have these discussions. I know that some folks, this may sound intimidating or scary, but I want you all to keep in mind a few things. First, that they're elected officials, whether they're state legislators or members of your community council, your city council, your school boards, or anything like that. They're just regular South Dakotans, just like you, and they live in our community. They're also elected for a sole purpose of representing you. And this is their job as elected officials, to represent the people in their districts and to know that you're one of those people. Okay, I see we got a minute, but I want to just go through these next 3 slides, and I hope folks are comfortable and confident in being able to reach out to me or share questions, because I don't think I'm going to get the Q&A component that I was wanting to have at the end of the session. But tips to influence elected officials: get personal. Definitely get personal, because you need to let them know how they're going to impact your lives if they pass these bills that you're either for or against. And always center the needs and the voices of those that are directly affected. Take time to reflect and sit with that discomfort, because it is uncomfortable, especially for us Indigenous folks. This is very much a colonial decision-making process that is foreign to us because it's not part of our cultural norms. Get creative. Like I said, we don't have to speak loud. You don't have to testify. You can silently write a letter. You can host different forums. You can use your artistic abilities and stay informed. Be prepared. Take the long view. Take time to rest, play, and prioritize. Whew. Okay, so I want to keep moving forward. You know, there's different resources for activism, community organizations, websites, blogs, resource page, ACLU of South Dakota, Indian Collective, Promise to Protect Coalition, Cheyenne River Grassroots Collective, and the South Dakota Native Caucus. There's also, you know, please take a screenshot or a photo. Here's a few of those, or here's a website, sdlegislative.gov. That for me is where I live during this legislative session. It has the legislative calendar, committee schedules, minutes, the agenda, contact information, procedures and rules. And please go to sd.net where you can watch the live stream of these hearings. All right. I am at 7:01 and I'm at the end of this presentation. I tried to put it all together in this 1 hour. I don't know if I have time for questions, but here we are. Back to you, Jana.
All right, just a couple of questions, Candy, and I will tell everybody too, feel free to reach out to us at any time, South Dakota at aclu.org with any questions, and we will get back to you. But just a couple of questions that came in. Is it okay to talk to your elected officials through social media? Can you tag them on Twitter, message them on Facebook? What do you think? And Jet, if you've got any insight as well, please pop in too to answer questions.
Yes, definitely. And I was going to say, heck yes, please do. I mean, if you have any access to your legislative representatives, like I said, they're representing you. And I have been very vocal when it comes to our tribal elected officials, even our city officials and our state officials, because they represent you. You are their constituents. You are putting your voice in their hands. So please convey to them how you want your voice to be utilized. Jet?
Oh yeah, I totally agree. You know, we have, this access that we, to directly contact them through, social media and stuff like that. That's an incredible amount of access, but I would say like, try to be strategic about it. Just because it just like, think about who you want to call in and call out, basically, and how you want to approach it, because you want to be the most effective as you can.
Great. I will also add that the ACLU of South Dakota has if any of you are on Twitter, the ACLU has a list of our legislators who have Twitter accounts or who tweet. And so I'm going to drop that link into the chat. So if anybody, like I said, if anybody's on Twitter and you want to check out which of our elected officials are on Twitter, please do so. All right, another question. What is it okay to talk to a legislator if you see them out in public, like at the grocery store?
I definitely do, because like I said, they are community members who dwell throughout the entire year in our community, but during the legislative session, they have a responsibility to represent you and to hear you and to be accessible. So if you come across them in Walmart, be polite, be respectful, but definitely use that opportunity, because again, as constituents, we're putting our voices in their hands. So let them hear your voice.
All right, let's see. What about COVID protocols during the hearings and at the state capitol? What's going on? What are the rules this year?
So like I said, there is the opportunity to virtually testify, but there is, you have to register 24 hours ahead of time. And masks, absolutely, you know, there are these standards and protocols, but I personally feel that we should all protect each other, protect ourselves, and protect our legislators.
I'd love to hop on just for a second, just because with the hearing for House Bill 1076 on Tuesday, we had a bunch of different people who were supposed to give testimony, who they had all, they had all done what they needed to do to request to give testimony remotely, and they had, emailed the committee and CC'd the chair, and they were supposed to get a like an invite to do that. And we were like we were all communicating and planning out our testimony and stuff. And on Monday night, we were like, okay, well, where is this? Like, where is this link? And then we were like, well, I guess it's coming in the morning. And then we, woke up and we're getting ready, and the hearing started at 8 a.m., so it's early, 8 a.m. Central. But it started early, it started even earlier for people who are on Mountain Time. And nobody had their links again. And, I was like, well, what do we do? And, we had people calling the Legislative Research Council to try and figure it out. And they were basically told, like, oh, there's nothing that we can do. There's nothing that we can do for you. So you should have called yesterday. So I just want to caution you that if you are trying to request to testify remotely, make sure that you are confirming that you are on that list. Make sure that you have that link as early as possible, because I don't know if it's a systems error. I don't know why that happened. I know that the chair of the committee did issue a public apology to the people who had been left out of it, but like, just make sure you're on it. Make sure that you have it confirmed before the morning of the hearing, essentially, because just assuming that it's going to get there was an oversight on our part, I guess. But I don't know, you just think that things are going to work because they tell you they're going to work. But I guess they just don't necessarily have it all together and figured out yet.
All right, I think I have one last question here. What should you do if you don't hear back from one of your elected officials that you've emailed or called or written a letter to?
Well, like I said, they're definitely inundated, which means, they're just bombarded often with some of those really seasoned constituents. And I witnessed that, even last year when I was lobbying in person, I've seen how a lot of these constituents, they make themselves known to their legislators. They call them every day, and they'll email them like 3 or 4 times a day. I even had a fella say, I emailed you 6 times yesterday, and he was like chewing them out. And like I was saying, that's outside of our cultural norms, because Indigenous folks, we have this traditional protocol, and we have this entity to respect leadership, even if it is bad leadership, because sometimes we know that we will be heard in a manner that is respectful to ourselves. But I know that sometimes we have to push, and we have to get uncomfortable. And that's what that slide was about. We have to embrace that uncomfortableness, and we have to step into this ring and this realm of a colonized process to create decisions and bills. So write them again and again and again.
Oh, okay, you know what? I said that was the last question, and another one popped in. Do you think it's more effective to testify in person, to write letters, to testify remotely? What's your guys' best experience?
Well, my experience definitely is in person, but not everyone can do that. But you get to convey your body language, your energy, the inflections in your voice, and you get to look them in the eye. You get to see each of these decision makers, and to even be in that present. And I really loved how last year I got to organize and, you know, activate some of our grassroots Indigenous youth to show up for the rally, to show up on horseback with trans flags, to show up and pray and smudge in the front of the building while these legislators were walking in. You know, there's so many different forms of showing up, but I am not going to discount writing letters and making phone calls, because those are also extremely important.
All right, I don't think there's any other questions, but again, if there are any that you think of, you know, later on this evening, tomorrow, whenever, please do email us, southdakota@aclu.org. I will also add that we've created an at-home advocacy kit as well. So if anybody wants to request one, I'm going to put the link in the chat, but please go to that link and request your advocacy toolkit, and we will mail it to your home. Anyhow, back to you, Candy, for any closing thoughts.
Well, I just want to thank folks for taking time out of your evening and for trying to evolve your knowledge about this legislative process. Because again, you know, I'm going to continue pushing that. I'm going to use that hashtag. I'm initiating Indigenous Justice cohort on the foundation of evolving the front lines, because we are amazing at protecting and using our Indigenous virtues to impact our communities. And now it's time to embrace those entities and this knowledge of the legislative process, because these bills impact all of us. They impact our children, they impact our elders, they impact everyone. So Wopi Latanka for this time. And I want to thank Jet and Jana for also supporting and being a part of this webinar. Thank you.